Gaur Bhaktavrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinatha Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Mayapur Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri ki jai. Gangamayi ki jai. Jamuna Mayi ki jai. Tulsi Maharani ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktavrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So from today we'll be reading selected verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam, wherein Srila Prabhupada has mentioned the grand opening of the Shri Shri Krishna Balaram temple, and we'll be commenting on those slokas. So today's sloka is Canto 6, Chapter 3, Text 25. Yamaraj instructs his messengers. Prayena Vedatadidam Namahajanoyam Devya Vimohita Matir Bhatamaya Yalam Trayam Jadi Kritamatir Madhupushpitayam Vaitanike Mahati Karmani Yujamanaha Prayena Vedatadidam Namahajanoyam Devya Vimohita Matir Bhatamaya Yalam Trayam Jadi Krita Matir Madhupushpitayam Vaitanike Mahati Karmani Yujamanaha. Mataji's? Prayena, almost always. Veda, no. Tat, that. Idam, this. Na, not. Mahajanaha, great personalities besides Swayambhu, Shambhu, and the other 10. Ayam, this. Devya, by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vimohita matihi, whose intelligence is bewildered. Bata, indeed. Mayaya, by the illusory energy. Alam, greatly. Trayam, in the 3 Vedas. Jadikrita matihi, whose intelligence has been dulled. Madhupushpitayam, in the flowery Vedic language, describing the results of ritualistic performances. Vaitanike, in the performances mentioned in the Vedas. Mahati, very great. Karamani, fruitive activities. Yujyamanaha, being engaged. Translation. Because they are bewildered by by the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Yajnavalkya and Jaimini and other compilers of the religious scriptures cannot know the secret, confidential, religious system of the 12 Mahajans. They cannot understand the transcendental value of performing devotional service or chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Because their minds are attracted to the ritualistic ceremonies mentioned in the Vedas, especially the Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Rig Veda, their intelligence has become dull. Thus they are busy collecting the ingredients for ritualistic ceremonies that yield only temporary benefits, such as elevation to Svargaloka for material happiness. They are not attracted to the Sankirtan movement. Instead, they are interested in Dharma, Artha, Kam, and Moksha. Purport. Since one may easily achieve the highest success by chanting the holy name of the Lord, one may ask why there are so many Vedic ritualistic ceremonies and why people are attracted to them. This verse answers that question. As stated in Bhagavad-Gita 15:15, Vedaischa sarver aham eva vedya. The real purpose of studying the Vedas is to approach the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Unfortunately, unintelligent people bewildered by the grandeur of Vedic yajnas want to see gorgeous sacrifices performed. They want Vedic mantras chanted and huge amounts of money spent for such ceremonies. Sometimes we have to observe the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies to please such unintelligent men. Recently, when we established a large Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan, we were obliged to have Vedic ceremonies enacted by Brahmins because the inhabitants of Vrindavan especially the Smarta Brahmins, would not accept Europeans and Americans as bona fide Brahmins. Thus, we had to engage Brahmins to perform costly yagyas. In spite of these yagyas, the members of our society performed Sankirtan loudly with mridangas, and I consider the Sankirtan more important than the Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Both the ceremonies and the Sankirtan were going on simultaneously. The ceremonies were meant for persons interested in Vedic rituals for elevation to heavenly planets. Jadi Kritamatir Madhu Pushpitayam. Whereas the Sankirtan was meant for pure devotees interested in pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We would simply have performed Sankirtan, but then the inhabitants of Vrindavan would not have taken the installation ceremony seriously. As explained here, the Vedic performances are meant for those whose intelligence has been dulled by the flowery language of the Vedas, which describe fruitive activities intended to elevate one to the higher planets. Especially in this age of Kali, Sankirtan alone is sufficient. If the members of our temples in the different parts of the world simply continue Sankirtan before the deity, especially before Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they will remain perfect. There is no need of any other performances. Nevertheless, to keep oneself clean in habits and mind, deity worship and other regulative principles are required. Srila Jiva Goswami says that although Sankirtan is sufficient for the perfection of life, the archana, or worship of the deity in the temple, must continue in order that the devotees may stay clean and pure. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur therefore recommends that one follow both processes simultaneously. We strictly follow his principle by performing deity worship and Sankirtan along parallel lines. This we should continue. Om Agya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantekam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adigor Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So here Srila Prabhupada is commenting on Canto 6. And we can understand from Prabhupada's purport that, of course, this took place after Srila Prabhupada inaugurated the Sri Sri Krishna Balaram temple. That means it was after April of 1975. So we can imagine how industrious Srila Prabhupada was, that from April 1975 up to November 1977, that's just 2 years, Srila Prabhupada completed the 6th canto, the 7th canto, the 8th canto, the 9th canto, and the first 13 chapters of the 10th canto. Srila Prabhupada, he struggled so much on our behalf so that we can become Krishna conscious. And it was for this purpose that Srila Prabhupada, his greatest struggle was establishing this Sri Krishna Balaram temple. Prabhupada had envisioned an American house, or sometimes he called it an Indian-American house, in Vrindavan. He began this contemplation even before he left for America, because he automatically assumed that because his spiritual master had ordered him to carry out the prophecy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to carry the holy name to every town and village in the world, he knew that the Vaishnavas would be made around the world. And he wanted to bring those Vaishnavas back to Vrindavan, which is the hub of the spiritual universe. Particularly, he wanted to bring them to the Radha Damodar temple, which he considered the most important place of the six Goswamis. They would meet there regularly to converse and hear Srimad Bhagavatam together. They had their library there, and they had their prasadam hall there as well. So this was where Srila Prabhupada conceived of having a temple in Vrindavan. And even when Srila Prabhupada had established the first center, which is just a small room at 26 2nd Avenue, he described to the devotees that he wanted to make a Rupanuga Vidyapit. Now, no one understood what a Rupanuga Vidyapit was. They hardly even knew who Rupa Goswami was. They didn't know that they were followers of Rupa Goswami. And what was a Vidyapit? It's a place where one gets knowledge for the followers of Rupa Goswami. When Srila Prabhupada described the Rupanuga Vidyapit, he asked for donations. And this was in July of 1966. So the first person who gave a donation was Steve. Steve became Satsvarup Das. So he gave $100 for the Rupanuga Vidyapit. And that was the beginning, the seed of this temple. And then from there, because Prabhupada was very busy from 1966 up through 1970, establishing temples, initiating disciples, training disciples, he made his world headquarters at Los Angeles. And one day, while standing in front of Rukmini Dwarkadish, Dwarkadish told him, "Now I want you to go back to India." And Prabhupada objected. He said, "But my spiritual master told me to preach here in the English language. My godbrothers are preaching in India." And Dwarkadish said, "Yes, but I want you to go back." And then again Prabhupada objected. This was told by Prabhupada to Brahmananda and to Tamal Krishna Goswami, both. This isn't just a story. So then again Prabhupada objected that we have this beautiful temple here. It's our world headquarters. So many devotees are coming to be trained. So Dwarkadish then told him, "If you go back to India, I will give you a temple 100 times better than this Los Angeles temple." This temple. So immediately, although Prabhupada was scheduled for our first big convention at New Vrindavan on Janmashtami, 1970, all the devotees were going to converge there to spend a week of Janmashtami with Srila Prabhupada. In a blink of an eye, Prabhupada told the devotees, "I'm leaving." And he left. He went to Japan, then he went to Calcutta, and he began his preaching of the World Sankirtan Party here in India. So Prabhupada did not know yet where this beautiful temple was going to be that Krishna promised. He thought maybe he should make the temple in Mayapur. So first he sent his disciples to Mayapur to purchase land. And then he went to Bombay. Bombay had always dreamed of having the temple at Juhu. He had already decided, this land is where my temple is going to be. So he started the negotiations for the Juhu land. And then he sent Gurudas all alone here to Vrindavan. He said, "Find a place, find some land, or find a temple. If we have to purchase it, or maybe you can get someone to donate it." So Gurudas was looking around, And he saw on the banks of the Jamuna the Lakshmi Rani Kunj Palace. He thought this would be an ideal place. So he communicated with the proprietor, that was the Maharaj of Bharat, and for 2 years he attempted to get that beautiful palace for Srila Prabhupada. The Maharaj was this way, that way, promising, then rejecting, then promising. Finally, when Srila Prabhupada came with the disciples, after 1 year of traveling to over 20 cities all throughout India with his World Sankirtan party, in November of 1971, he brought the devotees here for the first time to Vrindavan, and he wanted to spend a week here to take them to the holy places. So while Srila Prabhupada was here with his Western disciples for the first time, the Brijbasis were so impressed how Prabhupada had for the first time brought Westerners, not just ordinary Westerners, Vaishnavas, to Vrindavan, all dressed with tilak, dhotis, saris, chanting and dancing. Prabhupada would have Sankirtan every day in the streets. And they had a formal welcoming of Srila Prabhupada and his disciples at the Nagarpalika, the town hall. And the mayor himself, who happened to be the head Goswami of the Radharaman temple, Sri Vishwambar Goswami, he welcomed Prabhupada and the disciples formally. Now, the relationship between the Radharaman temple and our sampradaya, that coming from Bhakti-Vinod Thakur, etc., goes back 3 generations, because not only Srila Prabhupada was taking the help of Sri Vishwambar Goswami, but Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he took the help of his father, and when all of the temples closed their doors on the Brajmandu Parikrama, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was following the principle of Sanatana Goswami, that anyone who is qualified, whatever birth he has taken, taking the example of Narada Muni and Valmiki, anyone can become a Brahmin by proper diksha. So the temples closed their doors when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati came with his followers, and it was only the Radharaman temple that allowed the devotees to enter. And then in the time of Bhakti-Vinod, Sri Madhusudan Goswami, he was very close with Bhakti-Vinod Thakur. So now Prabhupada, he was accepted by the Brijbasis, and he requested the Brijbasis there at that meeting and in every forthcoming meeting that you please accept these Westerners. They're Vaishnavas. They're training. They've come here because they want to know about Krishna. You please give your mercy to them. And then he began asking if anyone would donate some land. So Prabhupada was holding his classes at the Radha Damodar temple, and the devotees were staying there at Lakshmi Rani Kunj. They would come to meet Prabhupada for morning and evening classes. And just in the area there is a place called Govindabag, where all the wealthy merchants live. And there was one family who used to come to see Prabhupada, the Sarafs, very wealthy Marwari family. So one day, Srila Prabhupada was speaking to Kashi Prasad Saraf, asking him if he knew anywhere he could get some land to build a temple. And Kashi Prasad told him that I have some land, but it's far out of the town. You might not be interested. Prabhupada said, oh, where is that land? Oh, it's in Raman Reti. Oh, Raman Reti, I like that place very much. I'm going to make a Krishna Balaram temple, and Raman Reti is where Krishna Balaram used to herd the cows. Please, can you show me that land? So Kashi Prasad arranged a car. There were only 2 cars in Vrindavan at that time. And the road was about 6 feet wide. It was just wide enough for one tanga to go between Chatikara and Vrindavan town. He took Prabhupada to this land. And when Prabhupada saw this land, he said, this is perfect. This is exactly what I need. And Kashi Prasad says, but it's so far from the town, no one will come. This is where all the gundas live. It's jungle. The rickshaws won't even come out here. And Prabhupada said, this is Raman Reti, the pleasing sands of Vrindavan. And this is where Krishna Balaram had their pastimes. Can we purchase this land from you? Or would you like to donate it? So Kashi Prasad told Prabhupada, well, the land is in my wife's name. She's in Guwahati now. When she comes back in March, we can ask her. So Prabhupada waited. In the meantime, he took another world tour. He came back, he was in Mayapur. He did the groundbreaking ceremony in March in Mayapur. And then he got a message that Gita Devi had come back. So immediately Prabhupada rushed here to Vrindavan. It was March 12th. March 12th, Srila Prabhupada goes to the Saraf's house, beautiful house, with a cow and 24-hour kirtan going for 40 years for her deities, Radha Kunja Bihari. Same program that we had. 4 groups, 6, it was Mataji, 6 Matajis, 3 hours, 3 hours. Prabhupada saw that this system worked. So he went to the house, and he didn't go alone. He brought, here in India, we have what's called a kachahari. Kachahari is where you do all the legal work. And it could take years to get something done with the transfer, the mutations, the taxes, the payoffs. So Prabhupada knew he didn't have time. So he brought the clerks, he brought the judge, he brought the advocates to Gita Devi Saraf's house. And there in Gita Devi Saraf's house, there was no typist. So he had Jamuna, with her calligraphy, write the land deed. Right there. Gita Devi signed it. The judge was there, signed and sealed. The land was ours. But Prabhupada described that some of our greatest enemies are here in India. Although this is the land of Dharma, everyone by birthright, they're devotees, they know about Krishna and Ram. But when the other sadhus heard that Gita Devi Saraf had given this land to, of all people, Bhaktivedanta Swami with his Mlecha disciples, they became furious. How could you do this? You promised that land to me. I'm right next door. I was going to build a temple here. So that was March 12th. March 13th, Prabhupada came here. He set up a pandal. He made the Bhumi Pujan. He put in the Ananta Shesh. Done in 2 days. No, it wasn't over. It's not so easy. That night, the #1 adversary sent gundas and dug up the Ananta Shesh and desecrated the whole place. So Gita Devi, she was beside herself. She didn't know. Maybe she had committed some Vaishnava aparad. Why has this terrible thing happened? And Prabhupada had by then left because he had to go to Bombay for the negotiations. So Gita Devi was having second thoughts after this desecration. She said, I don't know if I did the right thing. So she called, our temple president at that time was Kiradakshai Vishnu. He had come from England. She said, I don't know whether I've done the right thing. Maybe I shouldn't have given the land to your Guru Maharaj. I'm going to leave it up to my deities, Radha Kunja Bihari. I'm going to take 2 pieces of paper, one that says yes, one that says no. Put these 2 pieces of paper at Kunja Bihari's feet, and you pick the paper. Whatever that paper says, I will do. He picked the paper, opened it up. Yes. All right, because she had full faith in Kunja Bihari, the land is yours. So Prabhupada immediately sent devotees, and every day the devotees would come by Sankirtan here. Now we had another problem. This is not the original tree, there was a smaller tree here. And Prabhupada explained that there were 4 very sacred tamal trees here in Vrindavan. This was one of them. There was someone else who liked this tree, and that was a big bull. Because in those days, it was just the way it was described in Krishna book. The cows used to wander here every day. The people would let the cows out of their houses. They would come to this meeting place at Raman Reti. They would come here, and the bull would be waiting for the cows. So the bull would not let any people onto his land. And the devotees asked Prabhupada, we come for Sankirtan, but the bull won't let us onto the land. Prabhupada said, you just continue your Sankirtan every day. They would come every day, and finally, that bull went away. Then Prabhupada sent the first construction team. And Prabhupada got from Delhi, everything had to be done very fast because there was another concession. Gita Devi Sadhav said, we give you 1 year to build a temple. How can you build a temple in 1 year? But Prabhupada, he took the challenge. So he got an architect from Delhi. He made this little plan. It looked like a matchbox. It didn't have any windows. It didn't have any arches. It didn't have any shikars, nothing. But they had to have something for the foundation to start. Then finally, Gunarnava is here. He came. Prabhupada sent him. He was there at that time. And then by Krishna's divine mercy, one fashion designer from Netherlands named Hans Kielman, he became inspired to come to India, and he knew about the devotees because his wife had left him and become a devotee. And he came and he met the devotees in Bombay, and the devotees, hearing that he had some designing ability, immediately took him to Prabhupada. Prabhupada immediately initiated him and said, you go to Vrindavan and design the temple. So he came here. Prabhupada told him he wanted the temple to be in the same design as the new Radha Govindaji temple. Anyone has seen that? It has a beautiful courtyard, darshan mandap, and the altar. So he came here. Gunarnava explains that they set up a desk for him, a draftsman's board. And he took up his pencil and he started to draw. And Gunarnava says that he did not pick up that pencil from the paper the whole day and night. He just drew, and he made the design of the temple as we are sitting in today. And he sent that design to Prabhupada. Prabhupada loved it. But the foundation had already been made for the Delhi architect, and that was on ground level. It meant that every time it rained, the whole temple would flood. So Saurabh, by that time, he had to figure out, we had a very small budget, how was he going to lift up the foundation of the temple with the budget that we had and with the land that we had. So he meditated, and where you are sitting right now used to be ground level. We didn't have money for sand, for fillers, so he dug out where we're sitting right now. He dug out that sand, he put that sand up here, and he made this sunken courtyard. And he envisioned that when this temple is built, we will have cultural programs, we will have boat festivals, and we will have dramas in this sunken courtyard. So that's how the courtyard that we're sitting in today was made. Now, the construction, it was already 1972. 1973, Janmashtami came. The temple was not nearly ready by 1973. And Prabhupada very humbly, he requested Gita Devi Saraf, you please give us one more year. And she's a Vaishnava. She gave the one more year to Prabhupada. But Prabhupada was pushing. He was beating. There were 3 teams. 3 teams meant there was Saurabh and Gunarnava overseeing the construction. There was Gurudas and Jamuna. Prabhupada put them in charge of getting the deities carved, and they had to collect all of the money for the dresses and the deity outfits and the kitchen. Everything that had to do with the puja and the archana, Prabhupada would not let them touch the construction money. And the third group were the collectors. That was Guru Kripa and his Namahata party. Is Guru Kripa here? He arrived? He's here. Banabhata, he was part of the Namahata, right. And here he is. This is what happens when you serve in Vrindavan. Krishna doesn't let go of you. Such austerities they performed in Japan, collecting money. We won't talk about how they collected it. But they brought that money, $100,000 a month, to build this temple. And not only they were collecting, but the BBT told all of the book distributors around the world that every book that you distribute is equal to 1 brick in this temple. So all the book distributors became very enthusiastic to distribute more and more books because they were also helping to build this temple. You'll see here, there are 2 plaques. This is one plaque where it says that Guru Kripa, Yashodanandan, that means the Namahata party, they collected 27 lakhs. 27 lakhs was worth a lot more than what it's worth now. And then the other donors, also BBT is mentioned, because actually all the devotees from around the world helped to build this temple. So now Prabhupada, he was getting letters from Gurudas that, yes, Prabhupada, we assure you, Gurudas was so scared, he didn't want to displease Srila Prabhupada. Yes, the temple's ready, you come, Janmashtami, we've already invited everyone, the devotees are all coming. By the time it was Janmashtami time, 300 devotees who Prabhupada had personally invited from all over the world were here waiting for Prabhupada at the gate number 2, because this was construction area. They had the go-downs, they had the well, they had everything here was all construction. Prabhupada entered the gate August 4th, 1974, just 5 days before Janmashtami. He walks into the gate and he looks at the temple. First he goes into his room. He goes into his room and Jamuna, you see, Sri Krishna Balaram, there's no other deities in this pose as we have here in this temple. And where did this pose come from? Well, at the ISKCON Press in Brooklyn, New York, the best artists in the world were designing the paintings, painting together as a team for all of Prabhupada's books and for Prabhupada's Back to Godhead magazines. They were publishing all the books there. We had a printing press, we had different departments, photograph, Sanskrit, everything, in-house printing. And one of the greatest artists there, his name was Bharadraj. Unfortunately, Bharadraj couldn't come this year because of his health. So Bharadraj, he, on the back of one of the Back to Godhead magazines in 1971, he painted that beautiful picture of Krishna Balaram with Balaram resting his arm on Krishna's shoulder. And when Prabhupada saw that picture, that painting, he said, this is the Krishna Balaram deities I won in Vrindavan. Yes. Excuse me?
Picture. Prabhupada never said painting. He always said picture.
Picture, okay. Thank you. Super soul. So, oh, you're with the BBT, right? Yes, you would know. So, in the meantime, just after that, Prabhupada, he wanted to do as his spiritual master did, and his spiritual master had this mind-boggling way of introducing Krishna consciousness in such a magnitudinal, it was unheard of before. He had these huge fairs, and he would have sports, he would have competitions, he would have galleries, he would have dioramas of the different pastimes of the Lord. And these dioramas were made in the traditional Bengali method, out of clay and straw. So Prabhupada, he wanted to have dioramas also. So he sent Bharadraj, his wife Rukmini, and several of the other artists from America to Bengal to learn this art of making dioramas. And when Jamuna and Guru Das understood that Bharadraj painted the picture was in Mayapur, they called him here to oversee the carving of the 10 deities in Jaipur. So Bharadraj would come and go, Jamuna and Gurudas would come and go to oversee the carving. And Bharadraj remembers that when he went to Jaipur for the first time, they had 2 big blocks of marble. One block was black, one block was white. And he could see within those 2 blocks the forms of Krishna Balaram. And he watched the sculptors, because they have their dimensions, exactly how to carve the deities. He watched Krishna Balaram appearing from those 2 blocks of marble. So all the deities were getting carved very nicely, except for the deity of Srila Prabhupada. Gurudas, who was a photographer, he took photos at 360 degrees of Srila Prabhupada to make sure the sculptor would have every aspect of Prabhupada's body correct. But he didn't get it right. So Bharadraj rejected that. And the sculptor, being an artist, he got very upset. He said, well, then you do it. So it took a long time to get the Srila Prabhupada Murti ready. Much longer than all of the other deities. Now we have to remember that normally a person does not make a murti of themselves while they're still present on the planet. Possibly afterwards, someone would make a murti in memoriam. But Srila Prabhupada, he wanted his murti to be on the altar. How is that? Prabhupada sitting on the Vyasasana, at the same time an installed murti of Prabhupada is there on the altar. So sometimes when Prabhupada was in his room, this is after the grand opening, during the Raj Bhog, Prabhupada would call his servant and say, bring my plate. What plate, Srila Prabhupada? My plate on the altar. I want to try the prasadam. So the servant would run to the pujari and say, Prabhupada wants his plate. Well, the offering's still going on. Yes, Prabhupada wants to eat it. So Prabhupada showed us the non-difference of this murti of Srila Prabhupada and his very self, even while he was on the planet. It's the only murti that Srila Prabhupada installed of himself. In fact, this is the only temple that Srila Prabhupada personally oversaw every single aspect of the construction, of the standards, of the development, everything. Prabhupada was completely in charge of this temple. Every single department, he would set the standards. So, 1974, Prabhupada walks in the gate. He comes into his house, and the artists had surprised him because Prabhupada, along the line, as things were developing, Prabhupada would send more and more instructions. So he wrote to Jamuna and Gurudas, I want Astasakis on the altar with Radha and Krishna. Where are you going? Look at the size of our altar. The altar had already been made. And they wrote back to Srila Prabhupada, we only made Lalita and Vishaka. We don't see where there's room for eight deities, eight gopis. But they knew that Prabhupada wanted the 8 gopis. So what did they do? They had Bhardraj and his team make, out of clay and straw, the remaining 6 gopis. And when Prabhupada walked in his room, he saw those beautiful gopis. And tears came to his eyes. This is when you please your spiritual master, what happens? He just swept his arm like this, and he looked at the devotees. He said, you are all personification of the dolls. And he was so happy. So at the grand opening, those dolls were on the altar with the installed deities. And for the first time now in history, in 50 years, those dolls are being recreated, and they will again be on the altar on the grand opening day of Ram Navami. So after Prabhupada went into his room, he came out to see the temple, and he looked at it, and he said, this temple is not ready. We cannot open this temple. And he was furious. And everyone was so scared because nobody wanted to say anything when Prabhupada was angry. They would get blasted, of course. But he looked and looked. He said, there are no doors, because where we're sitting right now, this was the carpenter's workshop. There were hundreds of carpenters in here. And there was no machinery. They did everything by hand. Everything was by hand. And as high as the people were, that's how high all the shavings of the wood was, all around. Everything was going. The floor hadn't been put yet. The marble was all unpolished. They were just putting the floor up there. The doors, they were making the doors to the altar. They were making the asanas, the singhasanas. They were making the front doors to the temple. It wasn't going to be ready in 5 days. Impossible. Prabhupada said, we can't open this temple. It's not ready. And then he went into his room, obviously very distraught. And all of the leaders went in with him, wondering what's going to happen. And Prabhupada said, you tell me, Saurabh, when can you get this temple ready? Prabhupada, the guest house. The guest house where the governor was supposed to stay, the whole entourage was supposed to, the guest house was a hole in the ground, about 30 feet deep. That was the guest house. So Saurabh understood that, see, he wasn't writing to Prabhupada, Gurudas was writing to Prabhupada. And Gurudas didn't want to displease Prabhupada, so he kept saying, yes, everything's ready. So Saurabh said, if we have round the clock, 24 hours, the laborers, we can get the place ready in 6 months, maybe 7 months. So then Prabhupada looked at the Panjika, and he saw the next auspicious day after 7 months was going to be Ram Navami of 1975. He said, we will have the grand opening on Ram Navami. No excuses. It has to be done. They knew they had to do it. So after that, what was called the fiasco of all the devotees coming, and fortunately, the local devotees had not sent any invitations to anyone. So the Goswamis hadn't been invited, the VIPs, the government officers, no one had been invited because they knew that Prabhupada couldn't open the temple in 1974. So from the shock of Prabhupada expecting the grand opening would be that day, and also the anxiety that Gita Devi Saraf had only given this 1 year, Prabhupada fell deathly ill. And that was when 24-hour Sankirtan was started here. At that time, during Prabhupada's illness, Prabhupada had his secretary send a letter to all the temples around the world that you pray to Lord Nrsingadev, you pray to Krishna, and you start this 24-hour Sankirtan, which Prabhupada said helped him. And after about a month, Srila Prabhupada regained somewhat his health. He was well enough so that he could go to Mayapur, because in Mayapur in September and October, the weather becomes very pleasant there, and Prabhupada felt that he could recover there better. So he left, and he left the construction in the hands of Saurabh and Gunarnava Prabhu. And they shut down everything. They had all the devotees leave. They hired 350 laborers, 24 hours a day. They were working. They had lights all over the place. And when Prabhupada came and saw the temple in 1974, he asked Saurabh, "Where are the domes?" Because when Saurabh made the design, he went traveling around on rickshaw to all of the temples here in Vrindavan. Most of the temples don't have domes because they had to hide the temples so that the Muslims wouldn't come and destroy the deities. So it just looked like little houses, havelis. So when Prabhupada indicated that he wanted domes, Saurabh went to our contractor, Mr. Lahiri, Mr. Guha, Alabaks, who was in charge, he was the Muslim in charge of all of the workers, the contractor. He said, "Prabhupada wants domes, what can we do?" And Mr. Lahiri said, "It's impossible, we already dug the foundation, it won't be able to hold domes." And Saurabh said, "No, I want 3 domes." So Mr. Lahiri said, "Well, we can do it, but it has to be done secretly, inside." And at that time, we had a temple president named Harikesh Prabhu. They had to take permission from Harikesh. Harikesh said, "Impossible. This will desecrate everything because everyone will see that we're digging up the original foundation. You can't do it." So then Saurabh got a brainstorm. "We will do it secretly at night, and no one will know what we're doing because it'll be altars." Now, after this class, you can go and see the pillars here in between the altars. And you'll see on the wall some peacock feathers. And then you'll see columns in front of the wall with new peacocks. So those pillars, inside and outside, they were constructed to hold the weight of these 3 domes. Now, how were the domes made so quickly? Well, they have a wonderful system here. They use cow dung patties. Yes, they pile up the cow dung patties to just the design that they want, and all piled up. And then they put the cement, then they put the plaster, and that's how these domes were made. So quickly, just to please Srila Prabhupada. So when Prabhupada, after doing another world tour, he came back, it was then March of 1975, Prabhupada had inaugurated the year before the Mayapur Vrindavan festival. And this time, Prabhupada told Brahmananda He said, you tell all the temples, I want as many devotees as possible to come to this festival for the grand opening. And there was a fuel shortage at that time in 1975. And Brahmananda, he told Prabhupada that Prabhupada, there might be some financial difficulty because all the prices of the tickets have risen and not so many devotees might be able to come. And Prabhupada looked at Brahmananda and he said, in your lifetime, how much have you eaten? And Brahmananda said, a lot. How much did it cost for all that you have eaten? A lot. He says, just because it costs a lot, do you stop eating? He said, I want as many devotees as possible to come for this grand opening. So they came. It was the grandest festival we ever experienced. You can see the pictures. The Mayapur Lotus building was constructed. We all went there. From there, now Prabhupada knew, because you have Gaur Purnima, just like we have our festival now going on. I've gone over time, yes? It's okay? All right. So, we know that there's Gaur Purnima, and about 20 days later, there's Ram Nomi. So we had the same problem this year when we were making this festival. After Gaur Purnima, if we're not going to have the grand opening until Ram Nomi, what are we going to do with 1,000 devotees? So Prabhupada arranged that there would be a Pandal program in Hyderabad, and they would have a special boat, the whole train of devotees going to Andhra Pradesh, to Hyderabad, for this program. So he went with all the devotees to Hyderabad for those 10 days, whatever it took, and he sent an advance crew here because he knew the place was just a construction zone right now. Up to the last minute, they were still constructing. Even from the time Prabhupada walked in the gate, there was still so much to do. So he sent a few of us who had already been serving in Vrindavan to come here to get the place ready. He put Bhavananda in charge because Bhavananda was known at that time to be able to do the work of 10 men. And that's what was needed. And he came here, those of us who were sent by Prabhupada came here. We were all put in charge of our different responsibilities. I had to get Prabhupada's house ready. Now, Prabhupada's house was the only building in the whole project that was built. The guest house, they were still putting on the doors, putting in the furniture. Prasanatma, he was a Bhakta Purushottam. No, what was his name? Padmanabh. He was a Brahmin, South Indian Brahmin. Sura put him in charge of the guest house. We all had so much we had to get done in these, we thought we had 13 days. And then all of a sudden, one morning, because everything would go on in Prabhupada's house, we couldn't even stay on the property. We had to stay at Loy Bazaar and walk here for Mangal Artik every day. Mangal Artik, after Mangal Artik one morning, Bhavananda makes an announcement. There are only like 15 of us here. He said, I just got a telegram. Prabhupada is coming in 13 hours. We thought we had 13 days. We were really taking it easy. Now, in those 13 hours, you never saw such energy. All of the deities were in Prabhupada's house. All of the paraphernalia, everything was in Prabhupada's house. Everything here was construction zone. They had to clear out all the carpenters. They had to wash the whole altar, get everything ready. They had to measure where the deities would be standing so they'd be at the right. They had to set up the kitchens. Everything had to be ready by the next. And we did it. We did it. You never saw such cooperation. You never will see such cooperation anywhere in the whole creation. It all got done. And when Prabhupada walked in that gate, this time he came from the front gate, and there was a fountain, and was the water running? The water was running. And Prabhupada walked in, beautiful kirtan. He saw the place. He was beaming so happy, blessing the devotees. And everyone had felt so sorry for Saurabh, because he was getting the greatest beating. And then they understood. Prabhupada explained on a morning walk, he said, I have to beat him because that is my duty as his spiritual master. I have to get him to do the work. But actually, he's getting the most blessings. So he did. He got the most blessings. In fact, he got such blessings that just before the grand opening day, Prabhupada calls Saurabh and he says, now leave. Go to Bombay immediately and start the Bombay temple. But Prabhupada, no, you have to, there's too much work in Bombay. You have to go immediately. But then Prabhupada realized things couldn't get done without Saurabh being here. So he changed his mind. He let him stay for the grand opening. And then he sent him. And he sent Gunarnava too. They were a team. But Gunarnava couldn't handle he's from Wales. He couldn't handle the humidity.
There was so much work here.
Yeah, there was so much here to do. So he had to come back. And he had Bhagavaji on his shoulder like a parrot.
Yeah, he was,
right?
Bhagavaji, we had this relationship. He always wanted a son. And he was such a father figure. And Prabhupada encouraged that relationship.
Nice.
It was so good, I wanted to ask Daivi Shakti, I've got the microphone. Did the Sarafs want to build like a fuel station in front of the temple?
They wanted to. No, that would take another class.
Right, okay.
But I could do it in 5 minutes if you want.
No, if you like, that'd be great.
I'll do it in 5 minutes.
That'd be great.
You see where our temple is? And you see where the road is? It's 26 feet. So Kashi Prasad, he did not want to give this land to Srila Prabhupada. He had other plans. He was Marwari, and he was also an automobile spare parts seller. He had his centers in Calcutta and in Guwahati. And by the way, they also donated the land for our Guwahati temple, a beautiful hill there. Beautiful. And Gita Devi Saurav, she's 90 years old. You'll all be able to meet her on Ram Navami Day. We'll bring her. She lives just down the road. We have kirtan at her house. Prabhupada started this all these years. Every week we go for kirtan to her house. So Kashi Prasad didn't want to give the first 26 feet. He wanted to build a petrol pump there. So after the temple was opened, it was 1976, Gita Devi, she had no children. She only had Radha Kunja Bihari as her children. She had lived here since she was 14 years old. Over 40 years it had been since she had lived here. And one afternoon, Prabhupada called her to his garden. And she sat down. He sent everybody away. He wanted to speak with her. She told me this. That's how I know. And Prabhupada said to her, Krishna and Balaram, they are your lalas. They're your sons. And everyone knows that the mother has more love for her sons than her husband. Now, your husband does not want to give us this land. That means we have to have a little gate at the side of the property for this beautiful temple that you have built for your children. Is that right? She said, no. She said, there should be a gate at the front. So she took a piece of paper and she signed the land over to Srila Prabhupada there on that day in 1976. No, it's not over. It's not over. It's never over here. When her husband found out, she made a court case. He made a court case. That court case went on for 40 years. He had already died. The court case was still going on. And finally, just about 10 years ago, we got an idea. And we went to the Kachaheri, and this time, we didn't bring the Kachaheri to the temple this time. This time, we went to the Kachaheri, and it was at a time called Pitri Paksh. Pitri Paksh is a time when nobody dares to do anything, because that's the 2 weeks when you worship the forefathers. It's considered completely inauspicious to do anything during Pitri Paksh. That means the whole Kachaheri was completely empty. Nobody was there except for the clerks, and they had nothing to do. That was when we went to the Kachaheri. And in one day, we got the front land signed over into the name of ISKCON. There was another aspect. That was when the court case was made, it was 1976. We know that Srila Prabhupada, he left this world November 1977. So while Srila Prabhupada was in his home here, just before he left the planet, he started to have the devotees bring salt. Everyone knows what that means. When you bring salt, it means you're going to make a samadhi. But Prabhupada hadn't told the devotees where his samadhi was going to be. And then Prabhupada told them, you put my samadhi there on the land. Because if Prabhupada's samadhi is there on the land, no one can move a samadhi. So in that way, Prabhupada actually sacrificed his life by placing his transcendental body in samadhi on that very land that was under dispute. That was Srila Prabhupada's final sacrifice for all of us. Right. Thank you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. We'll be hearing now for the next few days from so many wonderful devotees who took part in this grand opening. And thank you all very much for coming. Hare Krishna.
Daivi Shakti ki jai. Very nice. Very, very nice.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. What are you doing these days?
Whenever I meet Radhanath Swami, I tell him, you're the only one that makes me cry in class. But no, you're also...
I don't see any tears. No, no.